Welcome to the Spiggle Law podcast, where we talk about issues for people who've been fired or afraid they might be, and other cutting edge employment law issues in the news. I'm thrilled today to be joined by one of our senior paralegals, Erin Shatsiek. She's been with our firm for a long time, knows a lot about employment law. Erin, what are we talking about today?
AI in the hiring process. Pros and cons,
hot
different
topic.
things.
So what do you, I know you've been, it's an interest of yours and you've kind of been reading up on that. It's certainly something that we're starting to see already, at least in the periphery of our practice, but what's on your mind about it?
Yeah, so just looking into it, a lot of the pros and cons, like I had just been reviewing things that can help applicants utilize AI and resume creation, things like that. And then also the employer side using it for scheduling interviews, reviewing those resumes as they come in, and just kind of looking at who's qualified, who's not, using that system, which is really great and efficient for both employers and applicants. I think the only thing that just worries, I think, a little bit is discrimination and privacy issues in that utilization with the employers using that to create those categories and to kind of weed out different applicants for different reasons. So it's something to be careful about. I know a lot of people say buyer beware, but I think maybe in this day and age we say applicant beware as well.
Yeah. No, it's a great topic, and one that's going to just continue to be, kind of a high profile, because companies are using AI to process resumes, to identify candidates, which is not entirely new. They've had kind of some automated systems before, but clearly, Chat GPT and the large language models, kind of put that on steroids. And we were talking beforehand, and as you mentioned, it represents a lot of great possibility, right? For companies to be able to dig through a high volume of applicants, to be able to perhaps identify those who would be a better fit. But as you point out, these machines are only as good as the parameters that we give them. For instance, we've been some news stories about Chat GPT, and it's basically sucking up all this information from the internet in order to produce these answers. And so it's getting good stuff, and it's getting crazy stuff that you can find on the four reaches of the internet. And so you've had Chat GPT be racist and sexist, right, because it's sucking up all this data. And so I think the same thing I don't know. I'm not a computer scientist. I don't know if it's exactly the same thing as these large language models, but these programs, if there is even unintentionally bias put into them, for example, ageism, right. If there's something you put in the parameters of the AI for the search that eliminates people who are over 40, well, then you've got a discrimination claim.
Well, yeah, and that's really interesting that you mentioned that too. Just thinking about it is that using these programs, the employers can actually intentionally put those categories in or unintentionally. But if they're intentionally doing it, I think it's good to note that lawmakers are taking action to put into preventative measures to protect people from this. And we had talked about some states were actually requiring employers to get the consent from the applicant to use the AI program, which I think is great that it's known to them and it's actually out in the open and they're not, blind to it going in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, as you mentioned, there are a lot of, everybody's looking at this. The regulators are looking at it. I think you also mentioned, before we got on here, the Biden administration has got its own blueprint. You want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. So the Biden administration recently introduced a blueprint for AI Bill of Rights, and it basically outlines principles for responsible AI deployment. So it's non-binding, but it does serve as guidance and offers key protections for protected classes such as age, race, gender, all those protected classes. So I think that's good, that there's actually some sort of guidance out there for employers to use.
Yeah, and I think the EEOC, if I'm not mistaken, within the past 6 months, I don't know if they issued guidance, but they are also looking at this and are, as the agency should be, on high alert for AI being used for either intentionally or unintentionally, discriminatory purposes, because an employer could still be liable even if they didn't go in and say, we're trying to exclude people that are above 40, but if they put in place a system that is the impact, as it's called disparate impact claim, employer could still be liable. And I think you mentioned like some of these AI bills of rights, and like what I think just a large kind of a piece that is AI, but just kind of larger in our culture today is like what happens to your data, right? Where does it go? It's, if you're giving the company, like you're giving them a resume, which isn't top secret information, but you're giving them some kind of personal information. And depending on what they've talked about, we've seen this kind of in the legal profession, right? Like if you go to Chat GPT, like it's learning by sucking in all this information. And so when you enter your search or you enter your information, like it goes off into the void. And I don't think people are necessarily like pinning it on you as an individual, but your data is out there. And so you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So in response to all those concerns, lawmakers are taking action. They've proposed the American Data Privacy and Protection Act. And that's just aiming to set rules for AI use in hiring and covering aspects like risk assessment and data privacy. So those are, those main concerns that you mentioned. I think that that's really important too, that they're not just looking at, avoiding the discrimination. They're also looking at protecting all that information that you're inputting.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing will be as these states sort of move forward on this is, is there what we call in our world, is there an individual cause of action? Can you sue as an individual if I'm an applicant and this happens to me? I mean, there are some instances where you absolutely can. I mean, if there was a discriminatory impact, certainly there's an intentional one. You have all the same laws that are available to any kind of discriminatory act. Title VII being the big one. State law claims the same sort of thing, but it'll be interesting to see, for instance, with a data breach, is there an individual cause of action? Because, it's better to have some regulation than none, but like if you can't as an individual do anything about it and all you can do is call, the Attorney General's office and make a complaint, like it loses some of its power. So it'll be interesting to see how states deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's interesting too that with the states that have already, enacted a lot of laws addressing AI and hiring and emphasizing that transparency and consent, because at least that way going in that your information is being inputted into the system, and hopefully you're maybe even a little more careful. I know that sometimes they'll have selections where you can maybe not disclose information, or if you don't feel comfortable doing it that way, you can, be upfront and say, well, I'd rather do it, via snail mail or, however you want to do it. So you're not inputting that information into a computer generated system.
Yeah. Well, and also not to be like Pollyanna about AI, but, it is interesting, the possibilities. Like I heard somebody talking about who's actually a proponent of AI talking about this the other day, saying there may become a point when you call like a call center, like you're calling Verizon or whoever, like about some customer service issue, that you will be informed that you're talking to an AI persona, and you will prefer that, right? Because AI doesn't get sleepy. AI is not crazy in the same way human beings are crazy. AI is always listening, like you make it, and knows, like has all this information. Whereas now you call and like people are like, well, I'd prefer to talk to a human being. And there may become a time where you're like, well, I'm kind of glad I'm just talking to this AI. Because we already see it where they can produce these videos, these kind of reproduce these videos, and you look like you're talking to a person, but it is AI.
It's phenomenal. It is just mind blowing to me. I am obsessed with it, and it's just so interesting.
It's crazy. But I wonder if at some point, probably not now, but at some point, if like when you're going through the interview process, like if that first round, if you're like, thank God this is a bot, right? Just because they know all this stuff, and let's assume that the company has got everything set up right. They're not going to ask you out on a date. They're not going to, discriminate against you intentionally. They're not going to get angry. Like you'd be like, oh, thank God, this is a bot. This is not somebody just thinking about where they're going to get their next cup of coffee or something else at the moment. So it offers lots of possibilities, as you say, but there are a lot of potential pitfalls, and it will be interesting for both employers and for people we represent, employees, to see what the regulatory environment looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's phenomenal to me, the world of AI, just in the benefit it provides to, people searching for employment and looking for different things, and maybe, identifying what might make you stand out on a resume and things like that is great. It's just, like that one little tiny bit of worry about where's my information going, and are they going to discriminate against me when I
Right,
submit
right.
this? Are they even going to look at it? So
Right. Well, and here's a level even more. I don't know what the word is. Fascinating, frightening, but like there's a guy named Peter Diamandis who's a big technology guy. He started the X Prizes, and he's all into AI, and he writes a lot about it. He's kind of a futurist, and so he was saying like within like the next 5 years, maybe sooner, we will all have our own AI assistant that will know about us, will know like what we like to eat, will know. And so like for instance, like if you say, hey, I'm hungry, I'd like a hamburger. Well, your AI assistant knows where you go, knows how to call. And so it'll be interesting to see like, okay, I just got fired, I need a new job. Maybe it is not just you, the individual, going out there and keystroking it and doing the research, but it's your AI assistant who is going out there and knows your predilections, knows your preferences, knows your background, and is culling through, all of these job ads. And I just thought about this to be even crazier, but not, not certainly unimaginable. Like your AI is talking to their AI,
right,
like trying to decide like, would they be a good fit for this job? Which, again, as always, there are ways that it could be abused, but there are ways that it could represent a lot of tremendous possibility. So instead of like going through and, getting like, bloodshot eyes because you're scrolling through Indeed and WiseHire and all these various job boards, like it's just your AI assistant just going like, here's the 10 jobs that would be good for you that you should apply to. So
I mean, I really haven't seen a downfall to it yet. Especially even these little kinks and things, it's like people take action right away, and it's kind of like putting systems in place. And so I think it's all positive and it's all uphill. It's all I can see. I can't see anything negative coming from any kind of AI development. So
yeah, it's fascinating stuff. Thanks so much, Erin. This has been fun. That was a great topic. And I'll let you get back to the next thing on your desk.